Alright, welcome back everybody. This presentation is going to be over the rules of composition part 2 with an emphasis in photography and videography. So if you really want to step up your game and start taking better quality photos, better quality videos, there's a lot more to it than just pointing your camera and taking some random shots. Alright, so composition is a great way to get started because all professionals use composition. Now, it's not just all about composition though, so as we progress forward in this class, understand that the best photos and cinematic videos are going to contain aspects of each topic that we plan to cover. And so soon enough, we're going to get into camera settings, so stay tuned for that. Alright, so this presentation is part 2, remember? So let's go over what we did in part 1, just so we can get back on the same page. The definition of composition is twofold. It's a mixture of something or some things, and it's a creative work of art, and this does include photography and videography as well. More aspects about composition that we need to cover is that composition is all about thought and attention to detail. Okay, that's what distinguishes high quality art from low quality art. And just like I said last time, you don't need an expensive camera to take a high quality photo. You just need good composition. So talking about good composition is easily identified by your viewers. And that's because they can see all the time and effort that you placed into it. It's noticeable. Photographers are always paying attention to their surroundings, and they're constantly looking around at what could be placed within their frame that's going to either benefit or enhance their photographs. Pre-visualization is something that every filmmaker does, and they do it before they go out on a shoot. Okay, this is called planning. And so to help you achieve even better photos and videos, just follow the rules of composition. Alright, so I got 6 rules for you. I got leading lines, rule of thirds, viewpoint, symmetry, depth of field, and storytelling. There are plenty others out there, but let's focus on these. Now we talked about the first half in part 1, so let's go ahead and talk about the other half now. We're going to focus on symmetry and balance, depth of field and frames, and storytelling. Alright, so let's go with symmetry first. Symmetry refers to elements that are arranged on both sides of the subject and they have equal visual weight or near identical formatting. Now, symmetry does not have to be completely identical on both sides, but it does help. However, precise symmetry is like an exact mirror image just cut in half. So you might have heard of visual weight before. This is what we call balance. And similar to balancing a scale, visual weight can either make or break your symmetry in your photographs. So since I mentioned balance, let's go ahead and get into that. Balance is a major component of symmetry, and it will bring attention to your photographs. Now, there are 2 types of balance, so let's talk about them. You got symmetrical balance and asymmetrical balance. Symmetrical balance is going to be the easier one, and it's basically the same thing as symmetry, the exact same on both sides, but you can also call this formal balance. One of the easiest ways to find formal balance in nature is to find a flower. So think of a flower blooming with all its petals. Well, that flower is symmetrical in most every aspect, meaning that it looks the same on each side. Now, there are some flowers that do not contain the same aspects on both sides, but they still have symmetry. So what kind of balance is that? Well, we call that asymmetrical balance. And asymmetrical balance refers to when each side of the photo is different, but yet it still looks overall well balanced. You can also call this informal balance. And informal balance is a little bit difficult to achieve sometimes. Balance does not always have to refer to the subject. It can technically just be used to enhance your photography in any kind of scenario. Alright, so in this photograph you can see that we have the term balance, right? And that's because the fisherman's balancing on the boat, correct? Well, that's not really true. Balance doesn't have to be that. Creatively, you can use it for that purpose, but balance means more than that. Notice how the fisherman is leaning to the right-hand side of the frame, which opens up some space on the left-hand side. And the photographer chose to place these birds here, probably in post, to fill that gap to balance out the photo. So as we go through these photos, try to critique them and compare them to the concepts that we're learning right now. Alright, so next up on the list is depth of field. Okay, now depth of field is just the distance between your camera lens and the farthest point out. And you can also call it depth. Okay, you don't have to just say depth of field. But depth is just the distance between objects in your photos, and that either makes them sharp or blurry. Alright, so it's going to be up to you, the camera operator, to choose your focal point, which is going to help you determine how sharp or blurry the objects and subjects are. We're going to come back to depth of field once we get into camera settings, and that's when we're going to be talking about f-stops. For now, try to make the background blurry. Okay, here's a little pro tip to help you out to get started. An easy way to add depth to your photos or videos is just to add frames. Now there's various ways to incorporate natural frames, but anything that covers up your subject will work just fine. All you got to do is place something on each side of your photo frame. For example, just like the picture implies, you can literally use window frames for this, but you can also use walls and corridors or tunnels. You can use holes in walls, holes in fences. You can use other types of windows or doors or openings of any kind. You can also use trees or branches and leaves and just jump up and grab a tree branch and shove it in front of your camera, right? Make sure that you're still following the rules of composition, and it doesn't really matter at that point what you use. Alright, so as we go through these photos, I want you to pay attention to the depth of field. Do you notice how some objects at the front appear to be closer, whereas some objects in the back appear farther away? The objects up front appear closer because they are in focus. Okay, last up on the list, storytelling. As it is inferred in the name, storytelling is essentially just telling a story, right? But how do you tell a story without words? It's all about visual communication. And just so you know, this is where things start to get a little bit advanced. Alright, so telling a story with your photos or videos is not as simple as you might think. Though most photos and videos do tell a story, the better ones, though, they provide all the details that make it interesting. Photographers explain things with their photos, creating moods and setting tone. They include critical details for story, and they do it within a single moment of time. Videographers, on the other hand, they get to explain things with their videos, right? Which is essentially the same thing, except they get to do it during multiple moments of time. So as we go through these photos, what kind of story do you derive from each one? Alright, so that concludes our presentation. We talked about the 6 rules of composition, going from leading lines to the rule of thirds, viewpoint, symmetry, depth of field, and storytelling. And since you've learned a thing or two about this, you're going to get out there and start taking much better photos. If you're feeling generous today, do consider hitting the like and subscribe button. Tap on the notification bell to be notified when I upload new videos, and you can share to anybody who's willing to learn, colleagues, students, friends, and family. Hope y'all have a great week, and I'll see y'all in the next one.